Welcome to this Superversive SF Roundtable, where we are going to be having a follow-up chat to last week's Roundtable, when we were talking about MAGA 2020. We have a collection of the usual suspects here, including SF Roundtable, where we are going to be having a follow-up chat to last week's I'm echoing really badly. When we were talking about MAGA 2020. Shush. There we go. Whoops. Okay, technical problems. Fixed. Echo's gone. Hopefully that wasn't coming through. Anyway, we have a collection of the usual suspects here. Who have we got? We have John and Jaji Wright joining us as usual. We have Marina and Dawn back again joining us, who were editors on the volume. We also have Daniel Humphreys.
Hello.
Hello, Daniel.
How are we doing?
Good, thank you. We had Elaine. Elaine, I don't know your last name.
It's Arias.
Hello.
Hi.
I should know this, shouldn't I? We also have Paul.
Hello. Paul Pyatt.
Thank you. I don't know. I was not going to butcher your last name. And Richard. Which Richard is this? This is Richard.
Yes, that's Richard Atkinson.
Hello again. Yep, you were here last time. No, you weren't. It's all good. This is going smashingly so far. And we also have a special guest who can't stay too long. Ivan Throne, who was very kind to submit an essay at the last minute for the volume. So Ivan, please tell us a bit about yourself. And Ivan has some slight technical difficulties. He'll be speaking shortly.
So this is Ivan Throne. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of the roundtable here. So a brief introduction. I first became aware of the MAGA 2020 and beyond anthology some weeks ago when Jason Rennie from Superversive Press reached out to me. We talked a little bit about what might be involved. And it was an interesting opportunity to talk about one of the things about Donald Trump and what he's bringing forward for the nation that I hadn't seen discussed very much. And I'd come across this topic, and my essay is called Father Cincinnatus, and it talks about the president, in particular Donald Trump, in the role of a father of the nation, acting as the father of the great national family that we have. Perhaps a year ago, some of you may remember when Kanye West showed up unexpectedly at Trump Tower. He'd been hospitalized for some mental issue breakdown or overstress. And one of the first places he went was to Trump Tower. Trump came down with him, and analyzing and watching their body language was fascinating to me. Because I'm deaf, body language is very important to me. I have to analyze that, simply as a matter of my survival. And I noticed it was an astonishing, not condescending, but very paternal body language that Trump presented. Could see Kanye visibly relaxing and feeling more confident. And that really was the genesis for what I wanted to write about in MAGA 2020 and the role of the father that's been played. And in the last few presidents that we've had, we've seen an evolution of this. George Bush wanted to be dad. He wanted to be everybody's friend. Wouldn't fight back. So when the leftist media would pile on, people would criticize, Congress would oppose what he wanted to do. He tried to get along. You had President Obama, who wanted to be daddy, well, so to speak, and bribe the children of the nation to like him. We all know if you're a parent, that does not work. We have an evolution now with Donald Trump, where he expects the nation to rise to the standard that Americans know is part of our heritage: self-reliance, success, wealth. All of those things that make America what it is, that vision of a shining city on the hill. And Trump provides that stern, yet fun, strong, yet loving patriarch, in a sense, that has been absent from American political life for a very, very long time. That was something I wanted to call out. Hopefully my essay gives you some insight into that perspective.
Okay, so, and as Ivan mentioned, Ivan's deaf, so we are feeding him questions as we go along, which is all a bit awkward, but we'll manage it. So, does anyone have any questions for Ivan? Oh, everyone's gone really quiet. No. Is anyone going to say anything?
I'd hate to try to follow that up. His speaking voice is just awesome.
I'll come up with something. Let's see here. Ivan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
So in respect to a father figure as president, I think that there are some overlaps. We don't traditionally in America look to our president as being a literal father. For example, in North Korea, it's quite the opposite. They look at them as being a literal father. It's more a question, I believe, of how does the father make you feel? Safe? Someone you can rely upon, who will act in your best interests, not in his. And taking that last point a step further, we have something right now with Donald Trump that the nation has not had within living memory. Donald Trump does not need wealth. Donald Trump does not need fame. Donald Trump does not need notoriety. All of these things he already possesses in abundance. And for him to take on the role of President of the United States, something that's been hinted about and kind of thrown at him for decades and decades, and he's always been, if he feels he has to. We now have a president that is not seeking office to become wealthy, like Hillary Clinton, or to seize power, like Hillary Clinton, or to destroy society, like President Obama, so to speak. This is a man who stepped forward because he's consciously and deliberately changing the trajectory of the nation, and by extension, all of humanity itself. One of the fun things over the last few months, we've seen the Refuse Fascism and Antifa and others with the slogan, for the sake of all humanity. They at least understand what's happening and what Trump represents in terms of gathering all of the momentum, all of the trajectories together and changing them. So from that standpoint, they're correct. They're idiots with everything else, and we know that. But what Trump's done in that sense is embracing the whole world and shaping it and taking things in a direction that allows the American nation to survive, to succeed, and to thrive. That's what a father does. I hope that answers the question. So a comment there on YouTube from one of the listeners mentions that Ronald Reagan gave us that patriarch. Trump has elevated it to regal. I think that's a very good point. Trump does not worry or spin in response to public pronouncements by the left, lies by the media. He's very direct, and he calls it out. He does not care the things that impact his personal trajectory. That was about is what he's doing for the entire nation. Does that help?
Yes, I think that's probably not a bad way to put it, Ivan. Everybody likes Ivan's speaking voice, and everyone is afraid to speak after him.
And for folks listening, by the way, as you know, I'm deaf. They're having to type questions out to me, so that's why you're hearing a bit of a pause in there.
Yeah, sorry about that. Like competing with Morgan Freeman, apparently. So John C. Wright had a question. If Trump is a father, what does that make the press?
Your nagging aunt.
Nagging. Quite-
Just a
I
moment,
was
I
thinking-
can question for me.
Anyone hear me?
We can hear you dimly.
Oh, okay. So if Trump is a father, what does that make of the class? Touchy neighbor children.
Neighbor children. That works.
Because he does spank them
That's
when
true.
they are bad.
That is true. Don, you're quite quiet.
I am? My mic is quiet, you're saying?
There we go. I can hear you, John.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions for Ivan? Because it's very slow and breaks the flow really badly to have large pauses. So, more questions for Ivan, or shall we bid him farewell? Ha! And someone said that's the quietest they've ever heard Mr. Wright.
So one of the things that was brought up was for me to speak a little bit about the Safe Streets project and what we're doing. And some of you may be familiar with what we do. For those that are not, about a year ago, not quite a year ago, when Milo Yiannopoulos came to Berkeley, and we all saw the videos of the riots and so on. My advisor, Mr. Swift, who has a background as a SWAT team commander, private military contractor, mercenary for those not familiar with the term, he and I were reviewing videos of Berkeley, and he got very quiet, started replaying some of it. And then he pointed out that he recognized not necessarily individual faces, but body language, training, and movement from his experience as a private military contractor. It was a very sobering thing to see essentially what are professional mercenaries embedded within the ranks of Antifa. Not that they're opening up with live fire, but they're providing expertise, they're providing training in their own reservoir. So we came together, myself, Mr. Swift, who have a background in military intelligence, and riot command, private business entities and individuals, and we came up with the Safe Streets project. The idea being we would have a hostile, not hostile, but rather an offensively oriented platform against the left. We have now, fast forward 9 months, 10 months, about 7,000 social media profiles. We're working on the machine learning, facial recognition, and other aspects of that to collate and identify these people so that we know who they are, what they're doing, and to help with their rendition to law enforcement in the event that they later, or if they later commit crimes, or now if they are on video or photographed committing assaults or other crimes. But as part of that, one of the other things, we don't talk about it a whole lot in social media, usually just for podcasts or one-on-one, is that the Safe Streets project also serves as a transmission belt. We do a lot of liaison work between various patriot groups. You have Oath Keepers, you have Open Carry Texas, you have 3%ers, you have Free Peace Patch motorcycle clubs, you have veterans groups that may not necessarily speak to each other. They may not be able to publicly speak to each other or even privately, but we serve as that transmission belt to enable them to connect, to enable them to coordinate. And in some cases, what we've done is actually provide training, as we did in Texas recently, in Austin, back at the end of October. And the results with our first efforts of that have been nothing short of phenomenal. In fact, the Refuse Fascism and the major Antifa news outlet that's going down both called out that the right-wing folks in Austin were about 250 strong, very coordinated and very armed. That's the outgrowth of our work, is to provide that coordination, our liaison, that transmission belt, and attach that to this offensively oriented intelligence operation. So that's the Safe Streets project, that's what we do. And we'll be expanding that through next year. There's a new crowdfunding platform called QuickFund that's kicking off in the next couple of weeks. And we'll be on there, and we'll be looking for support for people to help expand that work. Back to you.
Yep, Superversive Press will be getting in on QuickFund as well, as we are good friends with some of the founders. So, I have a quick question for Ivan. Ivan?
A question about, so folks, if I'm off topic, someone will ping me, make sure I'm not segueing off into different territory. But the questions come up about what's happening now with Antifa. That didn't show up on November 4th. That was deliberate. There's two reasons for that. Number one, the Refuse Fascism November 4th protests were primarily against Donald Trump and what they call his regime. Whereas Antifa is against Western civilization, so to speak. Trump just happens to be ahead of it from their perspective. They want anarchy. They want to overthrow things, a lot of destruction. The other thing is that Antifa at this point is aware they've had some very challenging setbacks. Number one, in terms of the public perception of them. That has shifted enormously. They are no longer considered sympathetic. They're now considered violent. They're working on how to overcome that. The second piece is, and this is a very concerning escalation from the end of the Safe Streets project, is that everyone has seen ISIS collapsing over in the Middle East. And that's great news. We're all very happy about that. One of the things that's not very well known, I think it was either the Atlantic or one of the New Yorker magazine has done an article about this for folks that want to follow up with their own research. There are a lot of groups that have been fighting ISIS, foreign fighters, so to speak, is a term people are familiar with, embedded in with the Kurds and some other groups are Antifa fighting teams. They're the people who've gone over there as Antifa. They've acquired weapons skills, they've acquired weapons training, they've engaged in urban combat. They know how to plant explosive devices. They've done house-to-house fighting. They've killed people. They know how to integrate and work with Islamic culture. And whether we like it or not, the people fighting ISIS over there are overwhelmingly Muslim themselves, so there's a cultural aspect to that. Those people are coming home. They're going back to the United States. They're going back to the United Kingdom. They're going back to Greece, which will have a severe problem with this. And that augments our initial concern of the private military contractors with folks that, number one, not only have those military skills, but two, they blend in perfectly, and three, they already have that cultural familiarity with Islamic groups here in the United States and can provide training to them as well. And the Antifa Islamic link is something else that they're working on at this point and that we're keeping an eye on. So you will see the Safe Streets project moving more into the monitoring of Islamic groups in the coming months. In fact, we're looking right now at doing some more ground dominance training in Dearborn, Michigan.
Okay, that sounds moderately horrifying. Moderately. Well, on that note, I'd like to thank Ivan for taking the time to be with us, and we will move into a more free-form chat.
Thank you for coming, Ivan. That was very interesting.
It was fascinating.
Yeah, but I want to thank everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure and a real privilege to be a part of the MAGA 2020 anthology. Going through, and I'm extremely humbled to be in the company of other writers, though, folks like John Wright and so on. It's an amazing opportunity. So I want to thank everyone and encourage you, buy the book and read it. You're going to enjoy it.
Thank you for those very kind words, Ivan. All right.
Well, I'm a real writer now.
Not by the Larry Correa enemy standard, however, of having 500 people at a signing. We haven't gotten to that point yet.
Not by the Larry Correa enemy standard.
Oh, it's tomorrow?
All right. Well, now that we don't have to type every second message, and I really appreciate Ivan for coming along. That was It was good. It was really good. It was really good to talk to him, and it was a bit tricky, but we managed. And my cats are fighting. So, Daniel, you want to tell us about your contribution while I go and break some cats up? I'll be right back.
Wait, what did he say?
Daniel Humphreys?
Yes, sir.
Do you want to tell us about your contribution to MAGA 2020? And I have to go and break some cats up that are about to rip each other to pieces.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll be right back.
It was kind of a funny situation for me. I never have really thought of myself as a short story guy. I never really liked to read them. I never really liked to write them. I like to kind of spread my wings and fly, so to speak. My first book was almost 200,000 words, so it was definitely a different experience putting something shorter out than that. But I think the main inspiration for me, my story is called An Afternoon with Grandpa, and basically I think the hook that came to me was thinking about my own grandfather. He was a pretty big influence in my life, almost really a surrogate father to me, because my own parents weren't around as often as I was with them. And one of the most interesting conversations I think that I ever had with him was right around the time of Rathergate during the 2000 elections. He had cataract issues, so he was blind for probably the last decade of his life. So basically, his way of consuming news, he would sit and listen to the television. And it was just interesting for me to try and explain to him, because obviously if you could see that, famous animated GIF file, it was very obvious that the file letter that they were trying to pawn off was, not typewritten. It was something that had been produced on a modern word processor. And it was interesting trying to get that across to someone who had never seen a computer, who had never, been on the internet, had really no understanding of what the internet was. And that was kind of the tack I took with my story, where you have this girl, this young girl who is trying to, explain to her grandfather, who is a little bit out of touch of this futuristic world, how things are now.
That's a great idea for a story. Really nice, particularly for a story about something good happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Everyone seems to be being very quiet this chat. That's,
Did the cats survive?
Because Josh and
yes,
I
I brought them up and I brought one in with me. Sitting next to me.
is what gives everything so much noise.
I'm going to turn John up a bit.
That may come back to haunt you.
That's all right. What were you saying, John?
The reason why it's quiet this time is because the wife and I are not talking over each other, which is usually what creates most of the noise on these chats. For myself, I also wrote an essay story, Failure of Imagination. I could not imagine that even in a science fiction story, something as unlikely as Donald Trump could possibly happen. Whole life, as soon as I started becoming interested in politics, which did not happen in my life until late in life, every news story I saw about politics was always bad news, and it always made me unhappy, until I grew up to be a crabbed, tormented curmudgeon at the ripe old age of 20. And then, when Trump was elected, every news and I dance around with bells attached to my toes, which is a sight no one wants to see, because you would lose your sanity to see it. And because it is, what we're seeing is something as grandiose, as great as the downfall of the Berlin Wall. We're watching an empire, an evil empire collapse. And that empire is the fake news. And Donald Trump, fake news, with the same
Sound problems.
Hey, John,
Did we lose him?
Hello?
John is having some audio issues. So.
You realize that the most profound portion of his statement probably occurred where he dropped out.
Like,
You know, right?
I want to hear more about these bells on his toes.
Exactly.
I've met
With
John.
pictures.
there's nothing I can do on my end.
What was that? Sorry. We're having a lot of dead air. This is going spectacularly well.
so
All the last
you
week
figure out
we
what's
had a few
going on.
people.
I will bring the phone downstairs so he can finish what he was saying. In general, since from my point listening, I keep hearing things turn off and on as people are talking. But go ahead, and I will bring this down to John, and we'll see if John can finish with it.
Anyone hear me?
Oh, there he is. Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, there's no way I can tell from my end when my mic cuts
That's why I was
out.
trying to
There's no way I
let you
can turn it down
But
because I didn't do
somebody
anything.
said they did want to hear more about the bells on your toes, so go ahead.
And
With my entire body painted blue. Which one I do?
Now-
I'm happy.
it gets more tantalizing every time we hear snippets of it.
What am I going to get?
Okay.
All I hear is laughter. Can anyone hear what I'm saying?
No, you keep dropping out. We
And
just,
Yeah,
Well,
we hear
it's-
occasional words.
and then we heard.
All I hear is silence, and then everyone talks at once.
We heard painted blue. It's more exciting with every snippet.
I'm trying to get an echo.
Can you guys hear this?
This is why I am happy.
Oh my.
Call Empire fallen. Like the Berlin Wall falling, the fake news fell. First, don't correct me. Anyway, big trouble in Little China when Jack Burton plucks a knife out of midair that is flying toward him and turns it around and throws it back at the bad guy with the two words fake news. And that is doing that. Yeah. And they enchanted the entire country. They had deceived the entire country, like with a magic spell. And now they're broken. That's what my essay was.
All right, more dead air. Excellent. The dead air show. That's all. So who else is here who is new?
Short piece.
Paul Peart, would you like to tell us about your
And it
story?
has a little bit of story.
I'd be happy to.
Hang on, I can hear
And
two
one
people.
of them, should I go ahead or you want me to wait?
Hang on, who wants to talk first? Jaji, were you saying
Am I going
something?
through now? Can you hear me?
Yes. I was going to say, Paul, would you like to tell us about your story? But Jaji, if you have something to say as a finishing thought, please go ahead.
I will try to continue, but it seemed like I'd turned off for a moment. So one of the things that I had been looking up was the Fatima prophecies. And I went to my church to open the church so our piano tuner could come in. And I got into a talk with the piano tuner. It turns out he was giving lectures on the 100th anniversary of Fatima. Over to John, him give this lecture about all the amazing things in relation to these visions that people have had. A lot of his lecture was about something about my relationship between a vision that the Pope had spoken Fatima vision. So, and I then had a Scooby-Doo ending. Do it. That was the background. I couldn't push short was not that Trump himself was, the power that fought that. The fact that Trump won stopped us from continuing in our downward spiral. The cultural and moral slide has been, is now kind of skid against. We're pushing against it. We're trying to move back towards normal. And that was what I was thinking of when I wrote this. I realized the way it came over, it looked like I was saying, Trump was the Messiah or something. But that wasn't what I had in mind. I just had in mind that he was like the turning point, where things went back towards normal. Because the idea of the Pope's vision is that the devil gets to take over for like 100 years. He gets more power. He gets to be in charge. And it seems to me, I was just reading an article by and saying like there was a strange demonic influence where no one had these claims of sexual harassment and sexual abuse. And then all of a sudden, bam, like after Hugh Hefner died, it's like some magic protection of the removed, and suddenly people are waking up and noticing. And I think it may be going too far in some areas, as often happens. It is delightful to think that there's a chance, sort of miasma that cultures concerning all these things, that we might just wake up. I mean, it might get worse. We might end up in Russia. But what if it just goes the other way? And Trump is the turning point. Trump is the time when people stood up and said, okay, I've had enough of this. So that...
From what I could make out of that, I totally agree. Patchy places.
I just love the idea that Trump is a step towards normalcy. That's
Yeah, that's really something.
Yeah, because he's Trump. Trump and John, my husband, have something in common. They're the only two people I know who are completely unaffected by political correctness. The reason they call Trump a racist is that he still talks like a guy from the 80s. He uses the words people used before they started correcting their words because of PCism. John does that too. That's why he gets in trouble online for using words like sodomite. When else uses or pervert. But it's almost as if the two of them have been protected from some sort of mental miasma that the rest of us have fallen into, either a little bit or a lot.
It's
a lot in the case of
the woe.
So it's really interesting. And when I first heard Trump was running, I thought he had a good chance, even before I knew which party he was running for. Just because he was somebody people have heard of, like Ronald Reagan. Normal people had heard of him. So it was amazing to see him not only win, but win supporting some things that I hadn't heard anybody but like a few friends say. Like I remember in the 90s, discussing certain issues that only crazy libertarians believed, that are things that are on Trump's agenda. It's just amazing. It's hard to remember how utterly unexpected it is. That 2 years ago, if we talked to ourselves, we went back in time, talked to ourselves on a chat 2 years ago, I don't think we would believe even what's happening now, much less, our 2020 visions.
I did read, actually, speaking of 2 years ago, I did remember reading a comment that I think it was on one of the Manosphere pages. Someone said the mood a couple of years ago, before the election of Trump, before sort of the turnaround in the last year or so, was conservatives were pretty much waiting for the left to start opening death camps and killing people. That was generally the mood. That was the feeling, the way things were going. That the left's hegemony was such that we were in a terminal decline, and that was it. Like
it was a magic spell.
Civilization was finished, and it was just a matter of time before they opened the death camps. And let's see how we go when we can rebuild. But this go around is done, and that mood is gone now. At least in America. I live in Australia. I think we're still a couple of years behind you guys there. Hopefully things will turn around, but things are looking pretty dark here. So
it's funny to see the liberals all freaking out because they think Trump is a totalitarian tyrant when they're asking for the things that have led us towards being in a totalitarian situation. Sorry, I understand what I don't feel sorry for, but so many people are just deceived by the evil fake news. I feel so sorry for the people who were so terrified they can't write or they can't go to work or all these things for something that's not there. It's not happening. It's never going to happen. It's just a lie. It's like living in a virtual reality where you're being shown a monster that's not in the room,
Yes. All right. So let's try to get vaguely back on topic. Paul said, as a final comment, we were promised camps. Where are the camps?
Well,
Michael, I think Michael Williamson has stopped saying that, but he was saying, I was promised death camps. Where are my death camps? For months after Trump's election. After Trump's election.
Well, were there any death camps in any of the stories? Because I wrote an essay, not fiction.
Yeah, let's hear about tomorrow's stories. Who else has one to describe?
Paul, tell us
Paul
about
is next, yes.
Paul and then Elaine. Unless Elaine wants to go first, I don't mind. Whoever speaks.
Well, I hate to trivialize this, but I kind of got into this anthology by accident. It was the night of entries being due to the previous publisher, and I was having a few beers, talking to Daniel Humphreys, and we got to talking about a
now Paul's wanted.
Wow.
And somebody mentioned that someone should write a story about that for the MAGA 2020 anthology. And then Daniel said something about zombie voters. And, in my state, with 2 hours left until the deadline, I took both of those ideas and wove them into Cleaning the Rolls. The idea of having free and fair elections is a keystone to our system, because if you wake up the day after an election convinced that you was robbed, that's a prescription for disaster. And I watched us administer elections overseas where we have people dip their fingers in purple ink to prove that they voted, and only once. And yet here we don't even require people to identify themselves in any way, shape, or form. And we just cannot continue to do that, because every election the stories get worse about the abuses, the potential fraud, the outright deception that goes into this kind of stuff, and it's very important. I mean, consider the newest Democrat hero, what's his face, the Groper. He won his election by less than 200 votes, and it's been since
Franken.
Yeah, Al Franken,
So
and it's been.
Isn't it suspected that Al Franken didn't win his election? He pretty much.
Well, and that's what I'm getting at is he won. You know, his margin of victory, so to speak, was less than 200 votes, and they've since discovered over 1,100 illegal ballots were cast by felons alone. Okay, and there's always stories about this poll worker found a box of uncounted ballots, and that machine was casting votes for the wrong candidate. You know, and this stuff. You know, our system's only as good as the people that are in it, and if we don't trust the people that are running it, you know, we're getting these results, and it has, you know, elections have consequences, and oftentimes those consequences are of national significance, because if Al Franken had not defeated his Republican opponent, we may not have Obamacare right now. So, you know, people need to think on those lines, and so I took that theme of, you know, cleaning the rolls, making sure that we have free, fair, and, you know, honest elections, and turned it into kind of a funny little story. And you know, there was always the talk about, they're gonna screw up the vote, they're gonna, you know, rig the election, and I'm not a huge Trump guy. I didn't vote for him or didn't campaign for him. You know, but the fact of the matter is, everybody on both sides needs to take that seriously. Because we cannot, you know, every 4 years start a new civil war and fight it for the 2 years, you know, until the midterms when we start all over again, or things are going to come apart.
Fair enough. Yes, actually, I agree with you. I don't know what you guys are going to do in the US about your less than reliable voting rolls. I don't know how bad it is in Australia with that sort of thing.
Well, here's how it works.
It's a huge issue, and it's funny because where I live, always had to have an ID to vote, but you have to have an ID to buy a video game. There's a lot of places where, like, they want an ID just to use a credit card. So it seems so strange to have people all up in arms because a state wants you to have to show your driver's license or some kind of ID form to vote. I mean, isn't that more important than buying a video game?
Was that, sorry, Judge? You broke up.
I was saying that isn't voting more important than buying video games?
You'd think so, but...
Talking about the voter ID laws, but the resistance comes from only one party, and it's the party that cheats.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that Democrats have had casting votes for the dead for so long has been happening for so long that it's a running joke. That the system is corrupt, and there's one. It's on one side. It's not equally distributed between Democrats and Republicans.
I think both sides play the game, though. I mean, it's like the reality is that if we wanted to end it, we could throw photos on the stupid registration cards.
Well, see,
It's on both sides, but which side calls the other side racist when they say we should check to make sure that the voters are really voting?
Oh, I agree with that. I'm just saying that both sides instead of trying to find a solution, they play to their base and
but one side says let's find a solution, the other side says you're racist. So you can't say both sides aren't trying to find a solution.
Well, I just if the Republicans were to come in, it would make me really happy if they said, "Hey, let's put photos on the voter registration cards." I would love that.
There has been a debate about showing ID at voting for the last two election cycles.
Yeah.
It's one of the main debates that the Republicans are talking about.
But they're always talking about a separate piece of ID.
Well, my state, I live in Indiana, and I feel like we've almost got I guess you could say the benchmark. It's gone to the Supreme Court, and they said, yep, that works. And basically what we do is we show our driver's license, they scan it, it marks you off in the system, and then you vote. If you don't have a driver's license, you can go to the DMV and you can apply for a free one. There's no charge. You can get free voter ID that will serve as to open up a bank account. It has the same scrutiny that you would have to do as far as bills and address proof, etc., as you would for a normal driver's license. I I don't know why other states haven't done it. I mean, there's precedent that it's you know, kosher. It's not you know, disenfranchising anyone, but I don't know. I haven't heard that it's been done anywhere else.
I don't think there's enough will for that, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's kind of why there is a fault to both sides, because Republicans are afraid to push for it because they're afraid to be called racist. Which is kind of a
the Republicans really need to get over being called names and just say, I don't care what names you call me. You're going to do it anyway. Doesn't matter what I do. Screw you. I don't really care if you call me names.
You might be thinking of a different party that doesn't exist yet.
That's all well and good to say that, but keep in mind that once the Republicans stop flinching when they're called names, that's when the Democrats are going to put out Antifa and Occupy Wall Street and their other armed thugs to resort to physical violence. That's why the establishment Republicans are so frightened. That's what they're frightened of.
Well, I mean,
they're cowards. Don't get me wrong; they're complete cowards. And Donald Trump is one reason why I admire him. Is he's the first guy I've seen in politics who's not afraid of the news. And it's the news that stirs up these riots. By the way, I think of them as like the devil.
And we need people to stand up and not care about being called racist before they get to the point, which sadly happens, where they go, okay, I'm a racist. And then they start actually acting and talking like a racist, which is not any better than the racism on the other side, which is, you know, what we have going on now. So it really is why to be able to stand up and say this is the right thing to do. You are using rotten egg politics. You're claiming that just because it's got this pretty outside of this pretty Easter egg, that we should all care about the outside and not the inside. And that's what the Dems do on every issue. Oh, it's going to hurt the poor. Oh, it's going to, you know, but it's always something that's bad for the country that they put this pretty package over, and what's inside is rotten, and what's on the outside is sounds good, but it's not actually good. It's not usually what will actually help poor people. It's just that they go, you're going to hurt poor people. How dare you? You look so bad. Well, somebody's got to start standing up and saying, you know, that doesn't fly with us Americans anymore. It's just nonsense.
I know.
Well, I think this is why. Sorry.
So I was just really quickly. The first Republican who stood up and said that they were not going to simply fall over when the news called them names, acted like a father. Now I think that was Ivan's point in his essay. Donald Trump actually put his foot down and stopped acting like a battered wife and started acting like a man. And a lot of the anger at the Republican Party came from Republicans who were tired of Gormless leadership.
Yep.
I mean, this is why kind of the have you noticed the escalation in the name calling? They've kind of moved from the racist, misogynist, their list of like 10 different names. They've kind of moved on to other things.
Homophobe,
yeah.
homophobe.
So now they're going to pedophiles and rapists, and that's why they're going so hard after what's his name, Moore.
Yeah.
Ray Moore.
They're trying to see if it'll work to get politicians out that they don't want. Race before they can get elected, it's so much easier.
Oh, sorry. Just circling back slightly to the voter ID thing. The whole thing is weird to me because here in Australia, when elections come around, well, first, we're not dumb enough to hold them on a Tuesday, which is just stupid. Our elections are on Saturday.
We're proud of our Tuesdays. A lot of people get time off.
Please don't take this the wrong way because I really like your country and I think there's much to admire. But having elections on a Tuesday is dumb. Have them on a Saturday. Everyone doesn't have to go to work.
I passed your comment along to the White House. The bombing of Australia is going to start on a Tuesday.
But on top of that, like in Australia, everyone's obliged to vote. They actually fine you if you don't. Well, actually, you're not obliged to vote, but you're obliged to turn up. Well, no, you're obliged to turn up, take a
I
ballot.
thought you Australians had some stones. They force you to vote, and you just obey them?
No, hang on. You're not actually compelled to vote, but you're obliged to turn up to the polling place and take a ballot. You don't actually have to put a legitimate vote on it. You can just draw a penis on it if you want and stick that in.
Like that's so much worse than here. I've been to the
Skywriter.
But you actually have
I thought Australians were tough as nails. I thought they were like Texans. When did you get such gormless?
Well, you can say that they just passed the law that we were hoping so much would go down. There were so many people saying they were standing up to bullies, even though they agreed with it. I was really hoping it would fail.
No, 60% of my nation just threw the young and the vulnerable to the pedos and the trannies. Like, Australia is not a tough nation at all. Australia deserves to burn at this point, I think.
Well, the big system is your elections are.
If they weren't required to go to the polls, some of those guys might have stayed home.
Oh no! The same-sex marriage ballot was actually a postal survey. Of course, now that they won, they're calling it a binding plebiscite. But they're saying, "Oh well, they've spoken. We have to pass it." If it had gone no, they'd be going, "Oh, it's not binding. We should pass it anyway." You know what they're like. Our media is worse than yours. About the same as yours.
Your elections in Australia are administered at the federal level, though. Ours are not. Ours are administered by the states. They establish how the rolls are done, how the voting is done, and all that kind of stuff. So there is a big difference. We can't force people to vote here because that's not our system. So really, trying to compare them, it's just two different kinds of apples. It's apples to apples, but it's Fuji's and Golden Delicious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm ambivalent about. We have mandatory voting. I'm not convinced it's a completely terrible idea. It does mean uninformed voters turn up, but it means, at least in theory, everyone gives some thought to the question, and it probably. I don't know. You don't end up with the case of a third of the country or half the country voting, and basically a quarter of the country deciding who gets elected to office. So
I was assuming that the people who are relatively happy don't vote, and then the people who care go out and vote. So if they don't vote, they're stuck with what the voters pick.
Look, anyone who is such a wuss that they would vote because they're forced to doesn't have the manhood needed to actually be a voter or to make the manly decisions you need to make to run a democracy.
Well,
you guys are going through motions like North Korea.
Yeah, that's not really true. I don't think that's
This
big a
guy
deal.
makes fun of Tuesday. Don't defend him.
What?
You made fun of Tuesday. You made fun of our Tuesday.
That's true. I must disagree on the two. I don't think most people would get up and vote on a Saturday. They have to go out and go to work anyway. So
Yeah, we have better things to do on Saturdays.
Fair enough. I think if you had optional voting here and it was on a Tuesday, our country would lurch much further to the left than it already has because conservatives have jobs, basically. That's why I find your Tuesday
early and late at lunchtime. That's what.
Or it could be like here, like when bad weather strikes, the conservatives are the ones that show up because the liberals can't handle rain, can't handle snow. Oh gosh, have to go through some crap.
In Virginia this year, where they had workers into canvass and convince all our locals to drag my daughter, who's never voted. She didn't even vote for president last year. And the Republicans had given started Democrats were there, so I couldn't get a Republican sample ballot.
Wow.
And those guys went home. But in general, you're right about who comes up in the weather and stuff like that. I brought her in. They said that the ladies looked at me carefully. They said, "You didn't tell her how to vote, did you?" I said, "My goal in life is to reach the point where I don't have to tell her how to vote."
I vote early.
To get her to the point where she cared or understood. But she grew up in China. Anything to her, able to make the bit yet of how valuable it is. But I think we're getting close. Not better than she to go. So there's hope. Yeah, voting early is a bigger and bigger thing here.
Well, I work right across
because
from.
You're to lose mailed-in votes than it is. They're all being. I just wonder if or confusion. So what about Elaine? What about your story?
Okay.
Excellent topic. Yes, go Elaine. Sorry, it's all over the place. No, we're on topic. Yeah, go Elaine. Tell us how you started, please.
Yeah, definitely.
I wrote it for the Trumptopia anthology, and I was accepted, and I got really excited. And then, of course, as we all know, it got canceled. I'm very happy that Superversive Press carried on with the project. And I was inspired by not just celebrities or actors acting stupid over Trump, but also the things that they said during the Bush years and the things that they say about Reagan and pretty much any other Republican. And so I wrote it in a letter format from the point of view of a leftist actor who is having trouble adjusting to a Hollywood in which people are more tolerant and where Republicans can actually be openly Republican and still work. Because the notion that Republicans have to hide their political beliefs in order to keep a job is just very sad. And the thing is, it's not just Hollywood. I think it's in real life too. It's like where I work, I don't talk about my politics at all because a couple of my coworkers are really don't like Trump. So when they start on their rants, I just don't say anything because I don't want to get fired or disciplined for getting into an argument with anyone. But I had fun writing the story. It was kind of fun to make fun of those people after so many of the nasty things that they've said about us. It's like I go through big Hollywood over at Breitbart, and some other actor or musician is off saying something completely insane about Trump. Like, I think the last thing I read was that Miley Cyrus hopes that she would rather the country be bombed by North Korea than for Trump to be president. It's just insane.
Wow.
I loved your story, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
That was fun to read.
Daniel asked me if there's a person it was supposed to be. There was an actor that was very much an inspiration, but when I read through it, I actually picture an English actor reading the letter. But I think I did leave some clues in the story. If you want to know who it was.
I must have missed it then. I'll ask you in chat so we don't spoil the surprise.
Okay.
Yeah, I enjoyed your story as well. It was very good. And I can definitely empathize with your work situation. I had a coworker that actually called in sick the day after the election.
Called in sick after the election. Wow.
You know, the news is entirely to blame for that. Everybody, these guys, Hitler is running against a good guy, and the good guy has 98% chance of winning. And then you wake up and find out that Hitler was just elected by your fellow Americans. Now, we don't think that's what happened, but they think that's what happened. They think it was that bad. You know, and it's so... Anyway. Who's next?
I think you're right there, Judgy. The thing is, though, have you watched the media has got increasingly hysterical as Trump has gotten more and more ordinary? Like, I mean, he's getting stuff done and he's doing a good job, but, you know, there aren't any death camps. Women haven't lost the right to vote. Planned Parenthoods aren't being burned down and banned and bombed and all the rest of it. Things are sort of continuing largely as usual with a more right-wing slant than they had before. And as that's continued, they've gotten increasingly more hysterical about how obviously Hitler he is. Sort of like they're doubling down on it as it fails to come true.
Well, they can't admit that they were wrong.
That's true.
Because otherwise, who will listen to them in the future?
I think that,
Well, not only, I mean, that, like, just yesterday, in the Democratic Party said Bill Clinton should have resigned. And the article about it that I saw when I first woke up this morning was all about she was going to say that. She said that. She said Clinton. And I mentioned this to John. He said that Andrew Klavan had pointed out Republicans accused of something, the news hounds the Republicans. If Democrats accused of something, the accuser. Environment is lying to them. It's like a little kid trying to find out there's no Santa Claus. They ask, the person's probably going to tell them. And so, you know, the nice thing is that the more that comes out on the news, the more, like, first the conservatives began to realize the news was lying. Now the Bernie supporters have seen that the news is lying. And things come out like Einstein and stuff like that. Each additional last year or so has what they now call red pilled more people. It's at a point where the average liberal, the kind of moderate liberal, is not going to be able to believe the news is telling them the truth anymore. But a lot of them still do, and I know because there's one about since the puppies, and I point out how it lied about people until to them, they just don't believe it. They just think that was some weird quirk, or I didn't notice what I was talking about. So they're living in this world where keep them riled up. Sooner or later, the house of cards is going to fall down. Netflix.
True. From what we can make out, you kept dropping out a bit there, Judgy. That's all right.
Everything is dropping in and out for me, and I don't know if it's happening to everybody or it's just is doing that.
It's a conspiracy by Google to silence us, obviously.
It might be we're having a problem with people yesterday, but they all thought it was them. So I don't know. Either the internet is.
Even if she tries
Do you guys sound like to each other?
Not as far as we can tell. As far as we can tell, it's just you guys dropping out of it.
You guys.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to hang up and try coming back another way.
Okay.
No, I'm not going to because last time I wasn't able to hang up.
John's dropped out.
it definitely sounds like their internet is choppy or something.
Yeah.
I'll try.
So what more would we like to talk about?
Well, last time we left out a few stories because I think we were planning on having other people come on. But David Haar got us a story. He was kind of one of the late ones coming in. I think, Marina, didn't you read that one?
Yes. I think I might have spoken about it last time.
Recap it for us.
It's actually one of my favorite stories in there, just because it's so unexpected, because it's set up as a high fantasy. and you're kind of reading along thinking, what is it doing in a political anthology? And then the ending just gets you. It's a good ending, an interesting ending in its own right, but just the way it ties into the theme of the anthology is just wonderful.
Oh, yes, I remember David's story. I remember getting you guys going, does this fit?
Yeah, I honestly thought when I got that story for editing, I thought he sent me the wrong story until I got to the end.
You have to get pretty far through it before you go, oh, I see why this belongs. But it's a fun story.
Yeah.
We also had contributions by Alfred Jennison. He had a story called The Great Joke. And it was basically about a joke that gets out of hand. But it seems like everything turns out okay, I think. And he also had an essay on greatness that just kind of went through what the qualities of greatness were and added some historical aspects and talked about Trump. Who else haven't we talked about?
Did you talk about Scott Bell at all? I just actually finished the story. I'm reading them more or less backwards.
I don't think we did.
Yeah, that was a fun story. It's one of several stories that we have that has this kind of idea that the leftists separated themselves after the election. This one is based around the state of California separating themselves and trying to build this utopian society. And by the time we kind of get there, it's already all broken down, and the United States is trying to reclaim California, so they're trying to catch, for lack of a better word, all the remaining people who are just kind of hanging out in the ruins of what was once California, because needless to say, their utopia didn't work out so well. So it's interesting. It's almost set like a military sci-fi, but it's also satirical, and the ending is hilarious once you get there.
Yeah, I wanted to. That one kind of read almost like a section from a larger work with the secret agent that came in and talked the hippie down off his suicide bomb. I got a kick out of that one.
Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite parts. I'm not, just like Daniel said, I'm not into short stories so much, but one thing about short stories is one of my earliest mentors said, it's always better to leave the reader wanting to know more after they're done with whatever you've given them, because it keeps them kind of thinking and wondering what the larger world is around the story that they just read. And some of the better shorts kind of give you that. Like, you want more, you want to ask the author to kind of expand on things, and you want to ask for the follow-ups, or you can kind of create your own story in your head as to what that special negotiator, what exactly did he do that everybody is like, oh my gosh, they are getting him in for the final negotiation. But I kind of appreciated that part.
Okay. I like that too, actually, about short stories, that the short tale told and there's some large universe in the background. I don't think we have enough short stories like that. Anyway. So, the rights of leftists apparently looks like their internet is completely broken down.
Ah.
That's all right. Hey, Elaine, can I just ask, is that your cat? Because I have a cat that looks exactly like that sitting next to me.
Yes, it is. I don't have her anymore, but her name was Cleo, and I miss her a lot.
Oh, because I have one that looks remarkably like that with the yellow eyes and the black named Spooky. Who
That is so cute.
snoozing next to me and only seems to have two settings, which is snoozy and insane ball of razor claws.
What's your
I don't
cat's
like her.
name?
Spooky.
Oh, okay.
From her habit when she was a baby of hiding in dark places and peering out.
Oh, it's cute.
We
Yeah,
got her as a stray.
did we have any stories with animals in them?
I don't know. I don't recall any, but I haven't read them all either.
Oh wait, there was a horse in mine.
Dadgy, you're back.
Apparently not.
No.
Now she's speaking backwards in devil speak. You know, one of these days we're gonna. You know what we should do? We should pre-record these. I know that would take a remarkable amount of organisation, but
Well, the dog stops on.
what was that, Judge?
That was his. We can do a job with this chat, which is use exactly what we're doing that happens set to.
Is this Portal?
Okay, Judgy, please disable the backmasking options. They're speaking forwards. Or is everyone too young to get that joke?
I couldn't hear you.
It sounds like you just garbled, Judgy. It sounds like you're coming through backwards.
Sorry, doing my. I thought it might be better, but I guess not.
Yeah, that's not
Well,
working.
actually, Dawn asked a good question just on the chat. We've been getting some interesting reviews. I think my favorite review so far was the review that went, didn't read for the same reason I didn't read Mein Kampf.
Yeah, you always cherish those. Unfortunately, we lost it. I think Amazon nixed it this morning.
Yeah, that was our one. That was our one-star review that's since gone away.
It saved via meme.
Yay.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
The immortal meme.
Yes.
Yes, Dawn did a very cute meme citing that review as well as a picture of Hitler reading MAGA 2020.
Yeah.
And, with the quote, "Das ist gut." I quite like that. We've had some other serious reviews that all seem to quite like the book on Amazon.
Yes, it's interesting what stories some of the people like, because it just shows that we have a little bit for everyone, because some people like more action-y stories and some people like more thoughtful, quiet stories. So I think we satisfy a wider audience than it looks.
Well, one theme that seems to be coming through in the reviews is that people are seeing hope. It's a positive anthology. You know, it's not because there's so much out there that is negative. I mean, whether it's on the left or the right. And that seems to be the only thing that's coming through anymore is just all this negative stuff. And this is just fun.
Yeah, I think just in general, in sci-fi, there is so much dark stuff now. Like even the most critically acclaimed and the most entertaining stuff, it's all really dark. So people, I think, are looking for something different.
Well, now if we can just find all of these people and get the book in front of them.
Yeah, that would be nice.
We'll figure it out. It's all good. So, does anybody have any final thoughts, or shall we wrap it up there? This comedy of technical errors. It's called a live stream.
Well, this is our hope for computers never taking over the world.
Maybe this is their subtle way of starting the takeover.
Destroy the world, but there wasn't.
Buy the book.
Judge, you need to exercise your modem. So any final thoughts?
Buy the book? Someone said buy the book. I can go with that.
Yes. Yeah, go buy it.
Buy the book sounds right to me.
Yes.
It's in print. It's an ebook.
Yeah, makes a good gift. It has a Hanukkah story. Hanukkah is on December 12th, I think.
I'm going to work getting it into audio as well. We're working on the audio version on Audible at the moment.
Gotta have Ivan read it.
It has a fun. It has a fun liberal triggering cover.
Oh, that makes me think of something. I don't know if anyone else saw this, but John De La Rose posted something about some comments he got on another blog, and I guess apparently we have someone that has gone out and hyperanalyzed the entire project from start to finish. But the funniest thing in there was the Trump riding the unicorn cover. They believed that was at one point the real cover and not just a joke. And
that is awesome.
That was an awesome troll.
Yeah. I mean, so for anyone that's listening, if you've seen the old cover with Trump riding the unicorn with the Russian text and the Cyrillic writing on it, that was a joke. It was meant to be funny.
Oh, Jason scared me on that one though. He's like, if everyone likes that cover, we might use it. And I'm like, no.
And Donna's like, my name is on that cover.
Honestly, if everyone had loved that cover and it had gone viral, I probably would have gone, we should probably go with this.
It still would have been better than the heads in the cabinet, but yeah, that was that.
Well,
maybe we could do that.
Brown wrapper would be better than that. Speaking of brown wrappers, I was talking to a friend on the phone.
We did have plans to do a special edition cover of it with.
That's right.
Really. But the whole Russian thing seems to have imploded at this point, which is slightly disappointing because that would have been fun. It may not be worth it. No, maybe we still can. Judge, you give up. We can't hear you. All right, everyone. Well, on that note, I'm going to wrap this up now. I'm going to press the big stop button. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, everyone, for participating. It was technically challenging, but I had fun anyway. Signing off.